You know what?
I almost don't think there is an America anymore. I mean, obviously...
That's what I'm fighting. That notion, it is incredibly pervasive and poisonous and difficult to fight against it. But, torpedoes be damned.
The issue is the media is completely fractured. The Daily Beast says that it is an alt-right conspiracy, this lab leak hypothesis. They criticize Bill Maher and Brett Weinstein and Heather Heying for even talking about it. And a month earlier, you actually had the New York Mag putting out the big story about the lab leak hypothesis. So it's like if the Daily Beast and the New York Mag are both prominent mainstream outlets, and they're both telling us totally different things, that you're a Nazi if you believe it, or it may actually be true, no one has any idea what to actually believe. And there's no unified culture. I was looking at Gallup polls. We go back to approval ratings to, say, Eisenhower to JFK. And the divide between Democrats and Republicans in approval was like 30, 32, 28. Meaning, 65% of Republicans would approve and then 30% of Democrats. But it was fairly like, everybody was kind of eh. Now it's Joe Biden. It's worse than it's ever been. 87 is the gap. Donald Trump was 76. The hyperpolarization is getting to the point where there is not one, but two different Americas right now. Because of that, I don't think that there's an actually cohesive America. It's split into two different entities. Yeah. And right now you have, CNN and all these outlets. Like I mentioned, the Daily Beast could tell you it's an alt-right conspiracy theory, and the Washington Post can literally put an article saying it's a strong hypothesis we must consider. So which one do you pick? Which side are you on? Which America do you fall in? Because you can't be in both at the same time. Either you're an alt-right Nazi for believing it, or even Washington Post is pushing the idea, and so is Bill Maher. But it's not even about a clear divide. It's about mass confusion. And I know, cue all the super chats about Yuri Bezmenov. Hey, we're here. How can there be a functioning America if no one can agree on any set of facts, and it's almost intentional on the part of the media?
There was a great line in President Trump's first inaugural address that I kind of hang on to, is that through love of country, we'll again learn to love each other. And I think that the solution to this, and look, I'm not saying I'm going to win, I'm not saying it's going to prevail. I'm saying this: the fight only ends when we stop fighting it. And that is basically patriotism. We've got to unify again around love of country. And that's why we have to speak out so loudly when we see people disrespecting the symbols of the country, like kneeling at a football game when they're doing the national anthem, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, you're right. It's a battle. And I know I've seen people on Twitter saying, we've lost the country, it's over. But it's only over when we stop fighting.
I value the U.S. Constitution heavily, but I wonder if I see automation on the horizon in a way we've never anticipated. And if it's not so much about the borders of the United States, but if it's about the Constitution and proliferating that concept globally. I mean, the news organizations are already global. They've fractured us. Our economy is global. It's been, poverty's fractured so more than it's ever been in this country. And it seems like it's the wealth gap is expanding. So rather than, at least the way I'm trying to go into it is like some sort of economic parity. That's why I love Andrew Yang. I don't know how you guys feel about his monthly fee or whatever they call it, UBI, Universal Basic Income.
It doesn't work.
Well, neither is what we're doing. So maybe it doesn't work less than what we're doing now.
Texas is working great. Florida's working great.
But what do you mean?
It's New York that's in the. I can't. In
the crapper.
In the crapper. California's the crapper.
The government's is fiscally solvent. Is that what you mean? Working great?
Yeah, jobs are exploding. People are happy. Kids are going to school.
But there's a lot of poverty laced throughout.
There's way more homeless in California than anywhere else in the developed world.
Poverty is a relative thing.
It depends on your definition of developed world. I'll clarify that.
But poverty is sort of a relative thing. Somebody who's relatively poor today would be essentially a king 50 years ago, and so in terms of what they've got. Right. But it's not the poverty per se, it's the ability to get out of it. And if you set your mind to it, what obstacles do you have to surmount? And again, you look at a state like Florida or Texas or some of these other successful red states, but you look at New York or you look at California, it's a dumpster, and you have to start thinking about why.
So if we're thinking about equality of opportunity, giving them the ability to get out of the poverty state, that's where UBI I like, but doesn't have to be money. You just need access to opportunity.
You just need
UBI
will
doesn't do that.
And a government that's out of your way, and basically a community for you to grow up in where people basically support each other, and there's trust, and it's easy to work through that society. It's very difficult in a place where basically neighbors all hate each other.
There was a meme going around that said only crazy people believe government should solve the problems that government caused. and when we look at the larger problems, I mean, when we look at what we're dealing with, it has the direct blueprints of our government selling out to the special interests in a way that, of course, is not capitalistic, that is not free enterprise, in a way that is that they're colluding, in a way that they're doing it secretly, in a way that they're conspiring, that's screwing everyone else over. And if you think the government could take more money from its citizenry and redistribute it fairly, accurately, you got another thing coming.
You know, we wouldn't need UBI if we didn't have these corrupt worker visa programs and unlimited illegal immigration. There would be no need for it. You would be able to get a decent job. You would be able to start a family at, in your mid-20s and be able to get a house. All those things would be feasible. This has been taken away from us by our government that is serving these international globalist corporations.
The problem is they're simultaneously, as you mentioned, it's not just illegal immigration, it's immigration in general. That means you're adding to the labor market in very, very large numbers. But business isn't developing that fast.
And it's outsourcing.
So if one person's and outsourcing, like I mentioned, the coding thing, the digital world is going to rapidly change this in a lot of crazy ways. Automation is going to change this, and that means you combine that with immigration. The labor market's going to explode, and there's going to be no jobs for people.
I've often fancifully thought that we're evolving out of a monetary society in general. That money is kind of like a transition period, and we're almost not post scarcity, but post money. Maybe, they say currency. I make the metaphor that electricity is currency, and that maybe the future of currency is your access to electricity, that you can build and make the things you need to succeed in life. You don't really need money.
We don't have replicators, man.
That's
just not true.
But, I don't know if it feels like we're on the cusp of something like that. And we're trying to solve this problem with money, but the problem is the money.
The problem is you've got people who propose UBI. Well, that would basically mean people in cities get free money and don't have to work, and the people who live in the countryside have to still farm and do a lot of backbreaking work.
So free electricity, maybe. If you could give people free electricity.
But how would you give them free electricity?
There's no such thing as free.
Yeah, somebody has to do the labor to produce it, no matter what that labor is. And that means the cost is always there. Be it, I'll give you this bottle of water in exchange for your labor. You paid the cost for it.
Give someone the opportunity to create their own electricity.
How?
Riding a bike every day. I don't know.
So who's going to make the bike? Who's going to make the generator?
Specialists.
And then you got to pay them. So it's not free.
Maybe you don't. Maybe you don't need money to pay people. You just need electricity.
No.
I don't know, man. I'm just trying to solve this in a different way.
This is something we see very often on the left, is the idea that money is a thing. That money is the driver, when money is just an idea that allows transactions. It doesn't matter if you're giving someone a bottle of shampoo or a sandwich. That's what you are paying. I could pay you in seashells if you valued seashells. I could pay you in old shoes if you valued shoes. There will always be a cost for producing something, because things need other things to exist. If you want to make a bike, you need rubber, you need metal, you need someone to make the gears, you need the labor of putting it all together. And you can't just have people do it for free unless you have a gun, I suppose, and slavery.
Well, there's nothing free, Ian. The government has to take it from someone else and then give it to someone else. There's nothing that the government does that is free.
Well, you know what money is, though. It's just a temporary store of value. So let's say I had a bicycle and it broke, and you said, well, I'll fix your bicycle for you. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, that sounds good. I have a cow. I'll give you a gallon of milk. But I'll give you a gallon of milk a week from now. But, just to keep track of things, I'm going to give you like a little note that says, this note is good for 1 gallon of milk a week from now. I hand it to you. And then you give it to him to pay for some cabbages. That's all money is. It's just a reflection of a value that we had already.
It's a placeholder. That's it.
And they've kind of decommodified it, so it's like a general placeholder for any. It works, and it's a fantastic evolutionary process that we've come across currency, that it was invented and that we use it. But
this is what I said
doesn't always need to be the way. I think
this is what I said during the lockdown, that only after the last supermarket has closed, the last dairy farm has dumped all of their milk into the ground, and the last farm has shoved all the crops back underground, will these leftists realize you can't eat money. It's a play on an old saying about only after the last river is polluted and the last forest destroyed. It's a Native American saying, I believe. And all these leftists got really mad at me for saying it because, it's a very simple bit of logic. The money isn't the food. UBI doesn't give you anything. What is that value in that check? It's nothing. It's basically saying someone did work somewhere and you should have access to it. Sure, but does that mean there are going to be people who are willing to work in exchange for nothing or for less? It creates a massive inequality. You'll have people who live in big cities, and you already do, who don't work and get access to the resources produced by farmers who do work and live out in the middle of nowhere. The general idea from many of these leftists is that you shouldn't be allowed to own what you make. That's it. The means of production are controlled by the people, and what you produce belongs to everyone. So you start seeing these really messed up scenarios with this system. In North Korea, for instance, if there's a family, a community, I'm sorry, because not a family, there's a community that has access to cows. Now, the cows belong to everyone, to the people. So what happens is, one day the cow dies, and all the people in that community look at it and say, we should eat this. You can't, because it belongs to everyone. So what happens is the guards will come and take the meat, and it gets distributed across the entire nation, which is ridiculous, really hard to do, and results in some people getting spoiled meat. So sometimes when the cow is dying, they'll have no choice but to secretly steal and eat it, and you get sent to the gulag for that. The problem is, if you want to create a society where everyone's equal and everyone gets access no matter where you are and what you do, you create a wildly inefficient system that can't transport resources properly, and it ends up with people doing a ton of work and some people doing literally no work. You have people in North Korea, this is amazing, I love this. Their job is to be a skateboarder. It sounds like magic to most skateboarders in the United States. They have skate parks in North Korea where there are kids who skate, and their job is you must be good at skateboarding so that we can produce good skateboarders and make good videos, because other people in the world want to buy that access to videos. They want to buy the content. They want to buy the product, and we want to be competitive. So they don't do any work other than just going skating. And that sounds like paradise to a lot of people, until you realize that once you develop that system, they're not going to make you the skateboarder. They're going to make you go mine sulfur, and there's going to be 10 skateboarders, and your teeth are going to fall out of your mouth. That's what you get when you get these systems. It doesn't work. And we've seen it over and over again. But you get a large enough population of dumb people to scream and demand it. They get their fingers into the institutions, and then you are left with a bunch of spineless, fat, wealthy, or well-off Americans. And I don't mean the general wealthy, I mean of the world. And so long as they are fed, they will not stand up, and they will not defend their values. And that's what allows these lunatics to take over and destroy everything.
Do you support unemployment insurance, Social Security?
Yes.
So like government handouts, basically. The government supplies you with something.
You pay for those things.
So
that's not a government handout.
I don't.
You don't support that?
So
especially not Social Security. It's a scam.
Well, but that's not the same thing as UBI, because the Social Security is basically, it's worse than you paying for it. It actually was stolen from you, and you could have put that money into almost any other investment and come out like a millionaire with wealth you could give to your kids. Instead, the government steals it and gives you a pittance of a percentage of interest. So unemployment insurance is actually, it's funded by people paying it. Like, we all have to pay it because we're...
Again, nothing's free. You pay Social Security. And if you were able to invest that money even independently, you would get way more money than the little bit that the government gives back to you that you paid into. And then anyway, they're in the United States, they're taking that money and literally investing it into the stock market, and it's screwing people over on levels that are just absolutely crazy, to the point where we're at right now, where there's even some people saying that there might not be enough money for other people's Social Security, even though if they paid for it.
They've been saying that since the 90s.
And they've been, we've had past presidents raid Social Security for use in other areas.
But
let me clarify. I support the ideas of,
me too.
We all pitch in, and then when someone falls on hard times, we pick them up.
So Jack Murphy was talking about this on one of his shows recently, about the U.S. Constitution being written for an agrarian society in the 1700s, and it reflects that, a lot of the things in the Constitution.
Like what?
Right to carry a weapon. You can't do it in New York City, but you can do it when you're
What's
walking
that
on
got
the
to do with
farm.
agrarian
That has nothing to do with,
society?
yeah. And,
Well,
and you could bear arms in New York
had
City.
nothing to do
You
with
just can't walk
farms.
around with an AR in New York City.
You used to be able to.
Yeah, you used to be
able to
able
have a
to.
warship in the docks.
you used
of
to be able to when we were
Battery Park.
mainly an
But there are
agrarian
docks there.
society.
But it
we're-
has nothing
we're
to do with
evolving.
agrarian. You could Philadelphia and New York were not agrarian when the Constitution was signed.
But the entire society was that they
No,
built
it
the
wasn't.
Constitution around.
No,
More or
they-
less. I mean, it was like pastoral.
Literally was
No.
absolutely not.
There was some industry, but it was late 1700s.
and you can still walk with a firearm around Dallas or Houston.
Yeah,
or
but
an AR.
we've had to alter it slightly as
Why have we
as
had
our
to?
society changes,
We had
because
to.
it's a 220-year-old document.
So?
You got to alter it as we go. So
No,
Well,
hold
that's
on,
nothing to do
hold
with
on.
Second Amendment.
People in 1776 had private warships. They could literally lay siege to New York if they chose to do it. You can't have warships
you could also
anymore.
have slaves in 1780 because it made a lot of sense. You can't. Do
And we
that.
amended the Constitution.
Yeah, we changed it.
The point is the right to bear
let
arms
me
had
finish
nothing to
this
do
point.
with agrarian
Okay, well, let's
society.
talk about the slavery clause then. You were fine. Slaves were fine in 1780. They're not fine anymore. We changed. So maybe we should rewrite a Bill of Rights for the internet age, where we give ourselves these unalienable opportunities: access to electricity, access to running water, access to a place to
Who
live.
provides those things?
Well, we would provide it to ourselves through tax, whatever you want to call it, taxes or something like that.
Someone has to do that labor, bro.
As opposed to UBI. It would be something more like you have
Who
these
is
things.
going to build the system and maintain it to give you water?
You know, I actually went to a country where they intended to do that. They tried to do it and ensure equity. And I saw equity with my own eyes. It was a tower of skulls, 5 stories high. The killing fields of Cambodia, the aftermath of the Khmer Rouge and Pol Pot, trying to execute exactly this vision. So I know it sounds good and sounds appealing.
Equity of what?
Equity of
opportunity?
life.
Equity of outcome.
No, it's opportunity. You're talking about outcomes.
I'm talking about opportunity.
No,
you're
you said
talking about outcomes.
No,
you
I
got to
wanna
have gas, you got to have internet, you have to have
I
water,
want to
healthcare,
provide that
etc.
as a basic opportunity.
That's not an opportunity.
Well, what can you, if you don't have clean water, you're done.
But that's not an opportunity.
It is an opportunity to survive.
And that's already kind of our local communities have passed laws to ensure that.
Thank
for us.
God. And if they
But-
hadn't, you
Then-
wouldn't,
no,
you wouldn't
but then
stand a chance.
who drinks tap water anyway? We're going to Costco buying it from them.
Well, a lot of people drink tap water and they filter it and et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, so they
what
get
if
a
you didn't have
filter from
electricity in this
Costco?
society and you couldn't get it? You'd be done. You'd what? You'd be
You
chopping
think we
wood
have?
for a
Wait,
living?
wait.
Come
Here's
on.
here's your problem. You think that we have electricity because of the government, and we don't.
We have a centralized electric grid that we
We have
that kind of work
electricity
together
because
to
of the
fund.
ingenuity of and entrepreneurship of the American people.
Yeah, we don't
It's
need a
not- it has not-
government to do this stuff. I like
But
the opportunities.
How do you
I-
guarantee someone water and electricity if they're homeless?
You can provide the opportunity. You can't make them take it.
How do you give someone the opportunity to drink water and have electricity if they're homeless?
Create water stations, electrical charging.
Who's going to build the
grids.
water stations? Who's going to build the electrical stations?
Me, Tim. Me and a bunch of
No.
robots.
Come on, you have
And
no- there's no- it
and we'll
doesn't
hire
work.
people to do it.
And who pays for it?
We can.
That's meaningless. It's utopian
I mean,
nonsense.
when you get into that's why you get into politics. You say tax money. That's the answer. If you
I'm
want to
gonna
do
so
social
listen.
programs, you get the people to pay taxes and come together and do
I
it.
want to take from you, Ian, so I can give to Matt. That's basically what you're saying.
I would like to produce so we can all have, Tim.
You mentioned that slavery should be wrong. It's wrong and it should be illegal. Yet we still have a system. First of all, the 13th Amendment, as Kanye West pointed out, still allows for slavery with prisons. And we saw Kamala Harris take advantage of that in a very disgusting way, having people fight wildfires at risking their lives. That's a saying anything about it. But taxation is a particular problem, not in and of itself. It's the fact that you have a corrupt government that takes from people to spend on nonsense overseas. Now, the concept of taxation, I'm not one of these laissez-faire capitalists who thinks that taxation is theft. I think the manipulation of our current political system is, for the most part, theft. Because they're taking from us, from our labor at a time when we are most desperate, and giving it to Pakistan for gender studies programs. They're giving it to Sri Lanka for speedboats. And regardless of whether you agree with it or not, they're giving it to other countries. They're putting it in Afghanistan, Iraq. They're putting it in Israel. They're putting it in Yemen. They're putting it in Sudan for military purposes because we support or oppose certain regimes. They're spending money in Syria. Why? We are bleeding jobs. Our economy's in the gutter. People are desperate for any amount of money to pay their bills. Now that's theft. When you've got someone who's on their knees begging, please, I just need to drink water. I need a building I can live in. And they say, well, we're going to take some of your money and give it to Syria and Yemen. That's theft.
It's brutal.
It is.
Yeah, I agree. I don't like paying taxes and not knowing where they go, not having control over it. But if we could focus energy and money or whatever into a program together that's transparent, that'd be cool.
Yeah, I think the problem is always corruption. The left tries to claim that what's going on right now is the intended consequence of capitalism. That's not true. And when people point to what happens in these communist countries, these things are also deviations from what the ideology dictates. Perhaps it's because it's impossible to have a communist system as the ideology dictates. And perhaps given a long enough period of time, maybe it's a short period of time, maybe it's longer, capitalism devolves into a corrupt crony system where people manipulate the system for personal gain and strip your resources away using power.
Yep.
Using force.
Yeah, power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. You would be way better off instead of asking and demanding the government to do something than you doing it with private enterprise voluntarily with other people around you that say, hey, there's this project, let's fund it, let's do it, let's do something entrepreneurial that will actually help people and incentivize people to do the right thing. You have a way better chance of getting success that way than beating at the doors of big government that's infiltrated by big tech, by the corporate globalist monopolies, and saying, hey, take more money from these people. What are they going to do with that money? They're going to take it for themselves, and they're going to give you a half-ass program that doesn't work, that doesn't do anything. You look at all the basic social services in the United States, so many of them are corrupt. So many of them provide inadequate services, to say the least. And for them to get more money, more power, to be incentivized on their corruption, on their middleman gangster-like activity is just pointless. You're better off doing it on your own.
I agree with you to a point, because I think if we started like a private, quasi-private public enterprise that was able to raise money to build electricity and water and housing for people, if it was a profit, then we would start to make money. And then when do we prevent ourselves from becoming corrupted? We need like a government oversight. We need some sort of protection so that we or whoever we pass the company to doesn't.
It's just corruption happens. And given a long enough period of time, you'll start to see corruption. So I agree. I think we need, I'm in favor of a mixed economy with certain regulations. But then what happens when the system just becomes more and more corrupt and nobody wants to actually deal with the tough questions and the hard problems? One of the issues I think we have as a country is that we're extremely wealthy. All of us, every single one. And so we're, to put it simply, fat and happy. We got our food, we got our McDonald's, we got our chicken wings, we got our Super Bowl. Now, the ratings are down, mind you, but people were just sitting around saying, why bother? It's so easy to just sit. Look, it's so easy to be a middle manager at a cracker factory and not have to think about any of this stuff and just go home and eat your ice cream and watch a football game. It's easy. No, why ask the hard questions? Why put yourself at risk? You've got it made. Now things are getting harder. We saw it in 2008 with the destruction of people's lives. This sparked a populist uprising. It was fractured by identity politics. We're still in that mess. People started losing and life started becoming harder. Now with COVID, as things become harder and harder, I think we're on the verge of people just basically having their heads explode. Because now they're actually becoming desperate. Now they're actually going to lose their homes. Now they don't actually have jobs. Now they're actually going hungry. Now you're going to see angry people. Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.